Okay, this is just a quick little tutorial on how to go through the first lab that you'll have this week. So this is the intro lab, and what this is designed to do mostly is to get you familiar with Google Earth. So at this point you should have Google Earth Pro Desktop, that version, downloaded on your device, your laptop or your desktop. And then you'll go through the lab. So this is just you want to take the quiz. Remember, untimed. Take as long as you like to work your way through this lab. First couple questions are just some information for me. You can answer those. And then there are just a couple questions about, there is a little math involved. Of course, this is a science class. So a little review and to see how you can work your way through a formula and some units, so you'll answer those. And then the crux of the lab is that you'll need this file here, so you'll want to click this file. It should download to your computer depending on which browser you're using, and then you'll want to open that. Usually if you double click the file, it should open in Google Earth. If not, you might have to go to Google Earth and go to File and Open. And so once you have that open, you'll want to use Google Earth and the file to answer the remaining questions in the lab. So what your Google Earth should look like is something like this. Over here on the left, this is where the file should show up. And this is where all files will show up. And so I'm using my scroll bar to zoom in and zoom out on the Earth, and my mouse to kind of spin it around and do some stuff like this, right? You can use these here to zoom in and zoom out, right? So you can do that. You can rotate, you can go left and right. But certainly if you are using the mouse here, it's much easier. And when you get kind of what the heck view is that, if you click the N here, it'll bring you back to kind of north. And so as you go through the lab, like let's go back to our lab for a minute, it's basically asking you that we use what are called place marks in Google Earth. It's this little pin or dot or some icon that points to a particular location on the Earth, and it wants to know how many do you see. And so of course you can jump back to, let me find my Google Earth here, and when you look at it you're like, I don't see any. So remember, these little triangles, when they're pointed like this to the right, it means you can expand them, so you want to do that. And then you can see that there's a list of things here. Now it does kind of indicate in the question that the blue are the place marks, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, looks like 6. Right, so then you can go back to your thing and answer that question. Then it's going to ask you to kind of move around using those place marks. And how do we use those? Is we can just go to the place mark that it's asking us about. In this case, it says Macaulay Sinks. If you like, of course, you can expand this a little so you can see what it says here, or make it a little smaller, whichever. But there's kind of two ways to use this. A single click will bring up some information. A double click should take you to the location. So we want to go there, we can double click it. And so it's going to bring us to the location. And there we are. And here's some information about it, which you can get rid of if it's in your way, so you can see. And if you want it back, you can click once and it comes back. And so there's a question about this. Some of it is either here in this little highlighted version, little text box, or at the link. So you can go visit that link, which should open within your Google Earth without taking you away from here. And then you can look at that web page, read a little bit, and when you're done, you can click back to Google Earth, and voila, you're back. So then you can kind of continue on doing those things. You can go to SP Creator. How do we do that? Well, of course, we just go to the little place mark here, and we double click, and it'll fly us to that location. In this case, what we're asking you to do here, I'll move it up so it's in the middle, is to measure things. And so one of the things we'll do kind of periodically in our labs is measure distances. You have a ruler tool up here. So if you click it, it'll bring up a box. You can move around so it's not in your way. And all we're doing is a line measurement. I put these little dots here so you'll know where to draw your line. Be careful that when you're answering the question, you use the right units. If it's asking for meters or kilometers or inches or feet, you need to choose the correct unit. And then for drawing a line, now you have a different icon. If you click once, that's the starting point. You drag it to the second point. You can click again, and then it stays, and it tells you the distance. So you're going to measure the distance from this point to this point and record it in the lab, and you're done. So when you're done with all this craziness, you can just hit clear and close, and then your icon is back to this little hand dude, and you're good. Let's see, some questions about measuring. Some elevations you can find out. So now we're going to go to a different location. So this is kind of how the lab is run. You're going to jump around to these different places, answer some questions. So in this landslide here, it'll take us there. Once again, if this little thing, which it probably is in our way, we're going to get rid of it. So here's an outline of the landslide that's occurred over the years, the material that's moved. And so what we're asking you to do is figure out what's the height of this cliff face that we see here. And so what we can do is wherever the hand is, this little cursor, it's going to tell me the elevation, and that is right here at the bottom. So when I'm over point B, it tells me the elevation. When I'm over point A, it'll tell me the elevation. I can subtract it, and I'll know the height of the cliff there. Now, if you're moving your little hand around here, your little cursor, and you do not see an elevation changing, what you want to do is come to the left here under layers. If it looks like this, you'll want to expand the primary database and scroll down. Make sure this terrain is checked. So sometimes it's not checked, and then you wouldn't be able to see the elevation. So if you check it, then you should be able to do that activity, and you can answer that question. Okay? And let's see, what else? This is just, once again, going to different locations, making sure you can determine east and west. Another function of Google Earth that we want you to be able to use is actually this thing that popped up when we went to this location. It is this icon that's up the top here. It shows historical imagery, so we can go back in time. Okay, so I could turn it off if I click it away, so it's not there, right? But if I want it back, I can click it, and it'll give me some information. And so what it does is, if Google has pictures, images from the past, you can look at those. I can grab this little bar and go back, and you can see the date change, and it'll show me how it looked at that point. And so it's useful for telling potentially when did the landslide occur. If I come way back here, it doesn't look like there's a landslide there, right? So I can then go forward in time and see when there's a change here, and then say, oh, it must have occurred in this time period. And so it's nice to see the changes over time. And so that's what we're asking you to do in these questions, is to use that historical imagery data to determine when earthquakes occurred or when tsunami damage happened, right? So that's how you'll use that. This is some more of using the historical data. You can also, of course, locate things. So if we go back to Google Earth, I'm going to get rid of my historical data here. You can see that the longitude, latitude are displayed here. And once again, as you move your cursor or your hand around, it tells you the longitude, latitude. So if you place it over an object, you can figure out what the longitude and latitude of that is. So that's a question, just so you get familiar with that. What else? And then, of course, there's a lot of data built in, so we can find some information that's already in Google Earth, and that's down here in the layers version. So you could see that there's roads and 3D buildings and oceans. As a kind of just suggestion, I would say that you probably just want the terrain on, of course, and maybe some roads or things like that. But the more stuff you have on, the borders and labels is useful, because that can help us guide around. But if you have too much on, then it gets too cluttered. So you want to be careful with what you turn on and turn off. But in one of the questions, it's asking us to expand this little more folder, and we're going to run around to, I forget, let's go look and see which one it is. Oh, the gallery, see? You got to read, I suppose. So I'm going to go back up here and get rid of my more here and expand the gallery. And here there's some hiking trails that we can check out. So if I click this, it'll locate some hiking trails. And so in the particular question where it's asking you to do this, it just says do a search here for superstition. So here's our search bar. This is where we would look for particular locations. We hit search, and it's going to fly us to that location. And then once we're there, if there's some hikes around, now we're pretty zoomed in, so you'll want to, I'm using my scroll bar once again to zoom out. And you can see here some hikes. And as I click on them, they give me some information. Right? So this is asking you to basically do that. Just be aware that on some of these, when you click, you get multiple hikes. And so you'll want to just choose the one that we're asking about in the, I'm trying to find one that has multiple, but of course the one that I want doesn't. But as you zoom around here, oh, there it is, siphon draw. So if I click it, oh, there's more than one, so make sure you go to the correct one when you're going there, right? And then answer that question. Okay, what else? I think that's pretty much it. And so then you're going to go back and read some or go to some links. Remember that when we click, let's go to the Tennessee floods really fast in my Google. So if I scroll, and once again, if I close this, it'll open that up a little. You have the ability to adjust the sizes of these things. If I go to the Nashville, Tennessee, there's a link here, and so some of the information is contained in that. Once again, if you click that, it'll open in Google Earth, and you'll be able to read that information and then come back to the map. And that's probably about it. So those are the main things we want you to be able to do in Google Earth. Measure, locate, use historical data, import different information, either stuff that I give you or stuff from the primary database. So that's basically just what this first lab is all about, is becoming familiar with Google Earth. So hopefully this tutorial and of course the lab itself will help you do that, become more comfortable, and then we'll use it in subsequent labs. So that's all I got for you today. So good luck, and I'll hopefully hear from you soon.